I mean, Keith Hernandez and Don Mattingly should both be in the Hall of Fame, but that's a whole another thing. I got to ask you this, Dan. I'm going to put you on the spot here. You might be well liked, you might be hated. So bear with me here, because I know I'm going to be hated for asking this. It drives me nuts, and people say this is because you're a Met fan. This is Speedy. I'm letting you know this now. You see the tape. This has nothing to do with me being a Met fan. Please. Did Derek Jeter, and this is where Yankee fans get upset, I'm in the minority. Derek Jeter deserved 100% of the vote. And I always say, absolutely not. If Willie Mays, and Hank Aaron, Babe Ruth, all those guys did not get 100% of the vote, and Ken Griffey Jr., all of them did not get it. And Derek Jeter wasn't even the best. He wasn't even the best player on his team, Dan. A-Rod was.
Yeah, he wasn't the best shortstop on his team.
The awards. Why should Derek Jeter deserve 100% of the vote? Like, he wasn't, like, Cal Ripken should have gotten more percentage than he did.
Yeah, I love to annoy my Yankees friends. I'm like, no, Cal Ripken was a better player than Derek Jeter.
Dan, A-Rod, Nomar, Cal Ripken, all of them at that time period, Jeter was probably the fourth best shortstop.
But funny thing, it's actually quite fortunate I didn't have my vote for the Jeter ballot, because when I vote, I intend to vote for players who need the vote, and that means I prioritize.
I appreciate you for that.
So I mean, people get annoyed with it. It's like, but yeah, it's the Hall of Fame's rules. Derek Gould, when he was the head of the Baseball Writers Association, I think it was 3 years ago, we've gone to the Hall of Fame and said we need to lift this 10-player limit because it's creating a logjam where you can't get enough 75% agreement on players. They hang around on the ballot forever, and then it just gets even worse. So, as I've been arguing for years, is I prioritize players at two thresholds. Players who are conceivably around 75%, and players who I think should be in or at least talked about who are around 5%. Because there's no way that Kenny Lofton should have been won and outed. Yeah, maybe you don't think that Johan Santana should have been in the Hall of Fame. I do on peak value. You had a guy who was essentially, at his peak, 90% of Sandy Koufax, and you're not going to tell me that being 10% better than Santana is the difference between being a one-and-out Hall of Famer and a inner circle Hall of Fame type. You have to talk about these guys, and so I would prioritize keeping guys like that on the ballot. Billy Wagner, just a lot of people have been low.
That was going to be my question for you later, Dan. Thank you.
So when I went over my 10 picks, I would not have had a place for Jeter, simply because he was getting in anyway. And anything over 75% is essentially a wasted vote under the Hall of Fame's bizarre rules that create this problem. And I'm also kind of glad, in a way, that I didn't, because I'd like to go to New York again.
They would have hunted you down if you didn't vote for him.
Yeah, because the non-voter was anonymous, but I, as a principal, wouldn't be anonymous about it because I think it should be public. That's another thing we've asked the Hall of Fame to let us do, to publicize all the names, and the Hall of Fame said that we can't do that, and that's very frustrating. But I would have publicized it, and then Dan Szymborski would have been the guy who denied Derek Jeter 100%, and then I could not cross the state line of New York. Probably not even parts of Connecticut, but yeah. So I'm probably personally fortunate that I don't have my vote yet. I got enough heat from the Rookie of the Year award from angry Cincinnati fans because I'm in the Cincinnati chapter because I live near Cincinnati. I was the vote that kept Jonathan India from being unanimous.
Oh.
And so Cincinnati fans saw the Cincinnati baseball writer as the one who put Rogers first and India second.
Can I be honest with you, though, Dan? You kind of did right because India's having a miserable season this year. So, I mean, it was
Rogers.
They both are. It was pretty funny because they're calling for the Reds to fire me, and I'm just like, how does that even work? What do you think my employment situation is? I'm not paid by the Reds. They can't fire me. They can't take away my credentials. I was a little worried. I figured that India was going to win the Rookie of the Year. I did not think that it was going to be so lopsided because Rogers was terrific last season. I thought it'd be like 23-7 or something. And then I was watching the reveal on MLB TV, and I saw the announcement like with one dissenting vote, and I'm just like, oh dear God, there goes the next week of my social media. As Dan Szymborski from Fangraphs was the lone dissenter, and then there was articles in the Cincinnati papers and Yahoo about Dan Szymborski being the one, and I'm like, ugh. And it would have been, and that's nothing compared to what denying Jeter unanimous would have been. So. Yeah. So I had a little taste of that, so I'm lucky.
Don't worry, Dan. I got your back. If you voted against him, I would have had your back. But again, this doesn't go against me being a Met fan. This is just it's statistics. The numbers speak for itself. If Derek Jeter got in 100% of the vote, but a player like I said, if Sandy Koufax didn't get 100%, if Tom Seaver didn't get 100%, those guys didn't get 100%. Why the hell does Derek Jeter? Why? Because he was a nice guy. And he was clutch in certain moments. Good for him. The guy didn't have a grand slam for how many years in his career? Never won an MVP. I don't even think he was even ever in the running for an MVP. He might have been. I don't even ever remember that. Speedy wants to look that up. I don't think he ever was.
It's the defense that always got me.
He was also never the best player on his team, Dan. He was never A-Rod in 09. The 96, 98, 99 teams with Bernie and O'Neill and Tino and Pettit. He was never the best player.
But what always got me was the defense. And I don't know how people didn't notice it when Brendan Ryan would come in as kind of Jeter's replacement, and he was so much better. Because Ryan wouldn't do the jump and throw thing, which I hated, but. Because you saw Ryan, and he'd get a hard grounder deep in the hole. He'd plant his foot and then launch it across the field. None of that weird, run and leap thing that Jeter always did. It drove me nuts. We always joked what's the most common line heard in a Yankees broadcast? Pass the diving Jeter.
Oh, God. And meanwhile, he admitted in his documentary he didn't even have to dive into the stands for the ball against the Red Sox. So there you go. He made that one a little theatrical. But Speedy corrected me. He was an MVP finalist twice in 98 and 09. So excuse me. So sorry, but he never won. But
never won.
But again,
no.
He was 100% of the vote.
Was rookie of the year. Was rookie of the year in '96. So my last question is just based on today's analytic metrics and also what they prioritize more. Is that how much do you think that would change Hall of Fame voting, not only for the past eras but also this current era, where even a player that maybe was dominant in a specific trait that isn't prioritized might not get in type thing?
I think older writers are, a lot of them have kind of transitioned with the times a little slowly, but I think you would see players like Scott Rowland and Larry Walker have gotten more support than you probably would have seen 20 years ago. And I think if Jack Morris or Jim Rice had been candidates today, they'd get much less support than they actually got. I still can't imagine voting for Jack Morris, but that's a whole other thing to get into. And I think you'll tend to see certain characteristics be more appreciated. You're going to see less obsession with picture win counts. High on base percentage hitters are going to be liked better. Obviously, he's not making the Hall of Fame, but there was at least more talk about Bobby Abreu and the Hall of Fame than there was. Than there would have been some years ago. I think if it had been like 20 years before, he never would have made the 5% barrier, and he did that. He's done it 3 times already, which is huge. I think you'd see players like Bobby Grich, Lou Whitaker get in, and I think it's just those types of players. I think like Chase Utley will get a lot more support than he would have Joe Mauer, although catchers are tricky, so maybe I'm wrong there. So I think that it will change the types of players who are appreciated. I think that Kenny Lofton and Jimmy Edmonds would get more support if you asked the voters in, say, 5 years to look back on them. But, maybe they'll change the Veterans Committee again, and we can kind of fix that.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I started next year's Hall of Fame class, and I don't think any of them were getting in the best shot as Beltran. I don't think he's getting a first shot after the whole scandal. Yeah, my last question for me is,
I'm voting for Beltran, definitely.
Oh, see, that's what. Now, what should he go in as, a Met or an Astro or a Royal?
I don't know.
Met a Royal. Really should be Met a Royal.
Yeah, you have to give something to the Royals.
What?
And you have to give something to the Royals.
No, you don't. They beat the Mets in the 2015 World Series. You don't have to give them anything else, Dan, all right?
I mean, in their defense, the Mets also beat themselves a lot of the time, too.
Yeah, really. Dan, stop. Come on. You didn't do anything with the Royals. You did a lot with the Mets.
How about we put him in as a Ranger? How about that?
Oh God! Why don't we just put him in as a Yankee and call it a day? That'll get everybody excited, and everything.
Yeah, the Yankees will build him Monument Park.
Yeah, great. Another retired number. That's just what they need. They'll run out of numbers at this point. My last question for me is, and I've come to notice this at baseball stadiums, Dan, and because with statistics and everything like that. They're not showing batting averages and anything like that anymore on the scoreboards. I've come to notice they're showing now OPS numbers and everything like that. It's interesting how the game is transitioning now to really the analytic standpoint of they're not even showing what a batting average is anymore in the games. Now you see OPS and on base percentage. What are your thoughts on how the game is really drastically transitioning into just strictly analytic numbers now, and that's it?
Well, once front offices kind of transition to use more analytic numbers, because even the least analytic front office today, call it, the Royals, the Rockies, would probably be one of the best analytic offices of like 1992. I mean, the Rockies don't really seem to use their analytic staff all that well, but they actually have an analytic staff. Someone in 1992 would be like, what, a team has a staff of those guys? But once teams started valuing certain things, it was inevitable that eventually fans would value certain things, because it would be weird for baseball to be run a certain way and fans to think it's the opposite. And once players see over time what teams are looking for in players, they become essentially, not all of them, but more numbers driven in that way, thinking about things like launch angle and plate discipline in a way differently than plate discipline in 1985 was. 1985 was, don't strike out, but it's different now. You still don't want to strike out, obviously, but it's plate discipline's kind of taught differently. And once those stats that teams use change, then inevitably it's going to be eventually that the fans want to read these things, because it's the fans who want this type of content. That is what makes us employed. It's not like we were worried about on-base percentage and we all of a sudden got jobs. It was that fans were interested in that kind of thing.
Leave it to the Rockies.
Senior writer and ESPN contributor Dan Szymborski joining us really quick. What's up, Speedy?
No, I was just going to say, leave it to the Rockies to only hire their analytics team like 2 years ago.
Oh, stop it, please. How long has it been before they trade Chris Bryant?
Yeah,
because
really.
his on-base percentage isn't high enough in Coors Field, so we got to get rid of that contract. Good luck with
that. You know what the Rockies are doing now? They're making noise that they don't want to trade Daniel Bard, that they want to extend him.
Oh, yeah, because I've heard that before. Okay.
Yeah, you look at the Rockies, and do you think extending the 37-year-old closer is what that team needs?
No, and you didn't have to finish the question for me to answer that. The answer is no.
I mean, the whole Trevor Story thing last year, where we might want to re-sign him. They didn't have a chance to re-sign him because they weren't going to
pay. Man, that guy could have been in a playoff race last year, and he completely screwed him.
They could have gotten prospects for Story. They could have gotten prospects for John Gray.
Yeah, each other. Story could have been in a playoff race, and the Rockies could have gotten a Hall of Prospects back. It was horrible. But Dan, thank you for joining us tonight, man. Before we let you go, how can the fans reach out to you on Twitter and not insult you with the Jonathan India voting?
You can always insult me. It doesn't reflect well on me as a person, but sometimes I'm more comfortable being insulted than complimented. Compliments are like awkward, but like, oh, you want a flame war? Yeah, that's fun. I'm kind of a jerk. That's fun. Let's do that. But you can find me on Twitter, Szymborski. It's DSZYMBORSKI or SZY if you're Canadian. Google will fix that if you have a problem. You can always find me at Fangraphs. I'm going to have a very busy week, hopefully, with trade deadline transactions. We've already talked about Benintendi on the website. I did some proposed reasonable trades just to get people talking a few days ago. We always have lots of stuff. Eric Longenhagen has just done the mid-season prospects update. We have a lot of stuff on the board with reshuffled prospect rankings. A lot of good stuff there. So check out Fangraphs. Check out me on Twitter. Check out me when I pop up on ESPN occasionally. That's pretty much it.
Dan, I'm following you now, by the way. So shoot me a DM whenever you hear something about the Mets, and then I'll get a hold of them and let them know if it's 30 foot or not. Okay.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me on, guys.